The celebration lights of Sanctus Prime painted the night sky in colors that most species could barely name. 200 years had passed since the cleansing, and the entire Dominion Alliance was remembering the day they erased humanity from existence. The capital world gleamed with towers that reached beyond the clouds, and in every plaza, aliens of 12 different species gathered to celebrate their greatest victory. Commander Ji Woo stood on the observation deck of her patrol vessel, the Radiant Judgment, watching the fireworks bloom across the planet below. Her gray skin caught the reflected light, and her forearms rested against the viewing window. She had been born 50 years after the war ended. But the stories were still told in every school, every training academy. Humans were dangerous. Humans were violent. Humans would have destroyed the galaxy if the Dominion had not acted first. She believed every word of it. Across the galaxy, on Station Kepler 7, a man named Tae Yang watched the same celebrations on a broken screen in his tiny quarters. He kept the volume low, his roommates were sleeping, and he could not afford to draw attention to himself. The station housed 3,000 workers, all of them indentured laborers who had sold their freedom for passage to the outer colonies. Most were from poor worlds, desperate worlds, worlds that the Dominion had conquered and absorbed over the centuries. Tae Yang was different. He was human. He had been born on a forgotten colony world, hidden so far from the center of the galaxy that the Dominion had never found it. His parents had died when he was young, and he had grown up learning how to hide what he was. Genetic disguises, false papers, a new name every few years. He had been hiding for 23 years now, ever since he left his homeworld to find work. On the screen, High Chancellor Vrex was giving a speech. The ancient being's face was hard to look at, all angles and sharp edges, with eyes that seemed to glow from within. Vrex had been the one to order Earth's destruction. Vrex had personally commanded the fleet that glassed humanity's home world, until nothing remained but radioactive dust. 200 years ago, Vrex said, his voice translated into 1,000 languages simultaneously, we faced the greatest threat our galaxy had ever known. Humanity was spreading like a plague, taking world after world, building weapons that could crack planets. They respected no law but their own. They saw every other species as either servants or enemies. Tae Yang closed his eyes. He had heard these lies so many times that they barely hurt anymore. Today, we remember the hard choice we made. Today, we honor the billions who died to make the galaxy safe. Today, we celebrate 2 centuries of peace. The crowd on Sanctus Prime roared its approval. Fireworks exploded. Music played. Tae Yang turned off the screen and sat in the darkness of his quarters, listening to the sound of his own breathing. Somewhere out there, beyond the edges of known space, his people were still alive. He had to believe that. He had to believe that humanity had not truly died with Earth. He just did not know if he would ever see them again. 3 days later, everything changed. A merchant vessel called the Profit Margin was making its usual run through the outer territories, carrying luxury goods from the core worlds to the frontier colonies. The ship was small, with a crew of only 8, and its captain was a Velthron named Kess, who had been running the same route for 30 years. Kess knew every star in this sector. He knew every trade station, every asteroid field, every shortcut that could save a day or 2 of travel time. So when his navigation officer reported an energy signature near the Void Rift, Kess immediately knew something was wrong. The Void Rift was a region of space that no one traveled through. It was a massive gravitational anomaly, a tear in reality itself that swallowed anything that came too close. Ships that entered the rift never came back. Probes sent into it stopped transmitting after a few seconds. Even light seemed to bend wrong near its edges. What kind of energy signature? Kess asked. His navigation officer, a young Krell with blue scales, checked his instruments again. Kess felt his blood turn cold. Nothing came out of the Void Rift. The rift only took. Change course, he ordered. Take us closer, but keep our distance. I want to see what this is. The Profit Margin turned toward the rift, and as they approached, Kess saw something that made him question his own sanity. Ships, Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Massive warships, each one the size of a small moon, were emerging from the void rift like ghosts rising from a grave. The ships were dark, their hulls covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and change in the light. They moved in perfect formation, silent and deadly, spreading out across the empty space like a swarm of predators. Kes had seen enough warships in his life to recognize their purpose. These were built for one thing only: destruction. "Get me a closer scan," he ordered. "I need to know what species built those things." His sensor officer worked frantically at his console, running every scan they had. When the results came back, the officer's face went pale. "Captain," he said quietly, "the hull composition matches records from the old war. The design matches too. Even the energy signatures are the same." Kes grabbed the console and looked at the data himself. His hands started shaking. "That is impossible," he whispered. But the data did not lie. The ships were human. Kes activated the emergency broadcast system, preparing to send a message to the nearest Dominion outpost. But before he could transmit, one of the massive warships turned toward them. A beam of light shot out from its hull. Not a weapon, but a communication signal. A voice came through the speakers. It was calm, clear, and spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Merchant vessel, you are not our enemy. Leave this place, and tell your masters that we have returned. Tell them that humanity remembers what was done to us. Tell them that we survived." Kes felt his heart hammering in his chest. He wanted to run. Wanted to jump to faster than light speed and get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But he was frozen, unable to move, unable to think. The human voice continued. "We do not wish to harm civilians. You have 10 minutes to leave before we advance into Dominion space. Go now." The communication cut off. The beam of light disappeared. The massive warship turned away, rejoining its fleet. As more and more ships continued to pour out of the void rift, Kes finally found his voice. "Jump! Now! Get us out of here!" The profit margin leaped into faster-than-light travel, fleeing from the impossible sight. But before they disappeared, Kes sent one final message to the Dominion outpost, one final warning that would change the galaxy forever. "They are human ships. Hundreds of them. The humans are not extinct. They are coming back." Then, on Sanctus Prime, in the highest chambers of the Dominion Council, High Chancellor Vrex received the message. He read it 3 times, certain that it was a mistake, certain that it was a hoax. Then more reports started coming in. More sightings. More ships. More messages from the edge of space. All saying the same impossible thing. Humanity had survived. And they were coming home. Vrex stood at the window of his office, looking out at the beautiful city below, and for the first time in 200 years, he felt afraid. Commander Jiwoo received her orders 6 hours after the first sighting was confirmed. Her patrol fleet, consisting of 5 warships, was to proceed immediately to Sector 447 and investigate the reports of unknown vessels. The orders were marked urgent, but they did not mention humans. The Dominion Council was keeping that information classified, at least for now. Jiwoo did not need to be told. The rumors were already spreading through every communication channel, every military frequency. Something impossible was happening at the edge of Dominion space, and every officer, with clearance high enough to access the reports, knew what it meant. The dead were coming back. Her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Sector 447, and Jiwoo ordered her ships into defensive formation. The space around them was empty, just stars and darkness, but her sensors were picking up residual energy signatures. Something had been here recently. Something big. "Scan the area," she ordered. "I want to know everything that happened in this sector over the last 48 hours. Her sensor officer worked quickly, pulling data from their instruments and piecing together a picture of recent events. What he found made Jiwoo's 4 hands clench into fists. "Commander, I am detecting traces of exotic particles consistent with void rift radiation. Whatever was here came from the rift itself. Jiwoo had studied the void rift during her academy training. It was considered a natural barrier, a place where space itself was broken. The scientific consensus was clear. Nothing could survive passage through the rift. The gravitational forces would tear apart any ship, any probe, any living thing that tried to cross it. Apparently, the scientists had been wrong. Keep scanning, Jiwoo said, and prepare weapons. If we encounter anything hostile, I want to be ready. They did not have to wait long. A ship appeared at the edge of their sensor range, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with perfect precision. It was smaller than the massive warships that the profit margin had reported, only about the size of a Dominion destroyer. But its design was unlike anything Jiwoo had ever seen. The hull was smooth and dark, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. No markings, no identification codes, just silent, deadly purpose. Jiwoo opened a communication channel. Unknown vessel. You are in Dominion space. Identify yourself immediately, or we will consider you hostile. For a long moment, there was no response. The ship simply hung in space, motionless, as if considering its options. Then it responded. The voice that came through the speakers was human. Male. Calm. It spoke in Galactic Standard, but with an accent that Jiwoo had only heard in historical recordings from before the war. Dominion vessel. We are not here to fight you today. We are here to deliver a message. Jiwoo felt her blood run cold. Identify yourself, she repeated. We are the survivors, the voice said. We are the children of Earth. We are the ones you tried to exterminate 200 years ago, and we have returned. The human ship's communication systems activated on every frequency simultaneously, broadcasting a message that would reach every planet, every station, every vessel within 100 light years. Jiwoo tried to jam the signal, but her communications officer shook his head. The human technology was too advanced. They could not stop it. The message was simple. 3 sentences that would shake the foundations of the Dominion Alliance. We remember. We survived. We return. Then, the human ship simply disappeared, jumping back into faster-than-light travel before Jiwoo could even order her weapons charged. She stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the empty space where the destroyer had been, and realized that the galaxy she had known her entire life was about to change forever. On station Kepler 7, Taeyang was working his shift in the recycling plant when his personal communication device vibrated. He pulled it out carefully, making sure none of his supervisors were watching, and saw a message written in ancient Korean, a language that only humans knew, a language that had been dead for 2 centuries. The message was encrypted, but Taeyang had the key. He had been given it years ago by an old woman on a frontier world, a woman who claimed to know others like him, other survivors hiding among the alien populations. He decoded the message, and his hands started shaking. Brother, we are coming. Stay hidden. Stay safe. When the time comes, we will find you. Taeyang looked around the recycling plant, at the other workers sorting through trash and waste, at the guards watching them from elevated platforms, at the gray walls that had been his prison for the last 3 years. He had spent so long hiding, so long pretending to be something he was not, that he had almost forgotten what hope felt like. But now it was burning in his chest, hot and fierce and impossible to ignore. His people were coming. After 200 years, humanity was coming home. In the central chambers of Sanctus Prime, the Dominion Council was in chaos. Representatives from all 12 species were shouting at each other, demanding answers, demanding action, demanding that someone explain how this was possible. High Chancellor Vrex stood at the center of the chamber, his ancient face expressionless as he listened to the panic around him. He had called this emergency session after the human message had been broadcast across the galaxy. Now, Every species in the Dominion wanted to know the same thing. How had humanity survived? A Dominion intelligence analyst named Da-un stepped forward to present her findings. She was young for her position, barely 30 years old. But she had a gift for finding patterns in data that others missed. Over the last 3 days, she had been working without sleep, digging through classified files that had been sealed for 2 centuries. What she found had changed everything she thought she knew about the war. "High Chancellor," Da-un said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "I have discovered evidence that approximately 50 million humans escaped Earth's destruction. They fled aboard colony ships during the final days of the war, heading toward the Void Rift. We assumed they were destroyed when they entered the rift. We were wrong." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned toward Da-un. "Continue," Vrex said quietly. Da-un pulled up a holographic display, showing star charts from 200 years ago. The humans did not die in the rift. They passed through it. Our scientists always believed the rift was impassable. But we never considered that the humans might have found a way. On the other side of the rift, they discovered something. An ancient megastructure network built by a civilization that died billions of years ago. She changed the display, showing sensor data from the recent sightings. "The human ships we are detecting now carry technology that matches nothing in our databases. They have had 2 centuries to study these ancient structures, to learn from them, to build weapons and engines far beyond anything we possess." One of the council members, a Krell named Than, spoke up. "How many ships are we talking about?" Da-un hesitated. "Our best estimates suggest at least 500 capital ships, possibly more. And they are all heading toward Dominion space." The panic returned, louder than before. Species representatives were demanding military action, demanding that the Dominion fleet be mobilized, demanding that this threat be eliminated just as it had been 2 centuries ago. But Vrex was silent. He stared at the holographic display, at the images of human warships emerging from the void. And he remembered the day he had ordered Earth's destruction. He remembered the orbital bombardment that had turned the human homeworld into glass and ash. He remembered the justifications he had given, the speeches he had made about protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. Now that species was back, and they had not forgotten what he had done. "Mobilize the fleet," Vrex finally said. "Send word to every Dominion world, prepare for war." But even as he gave the orders, Vrex knew the truth. The Dominion had spent 2 centuries celebrating a victory that had never truly been won. They had convinced themselves that they were safe, that the threat was gone, that they would never have to answer for what they had done. They were wrong. Far beyond the edge of Dominion space, Admiral Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Defiance and watched the fleet assemble. 500 warships, each one built in the massive shipyards hidden within the ancient megastructures. 200 years of preparation. 200 years of waiting. 200 years of remembering. Captain Sora stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays. "The Dominion is mobilizing," she reported. "Intelligence suggests they are gathering their forces at the Nexus Gate." Hyun-woo nodded slowly. He was old now, one of the last survivors who remembered Earth with his own eyes. He had been a young officer when the colony ships fled into the void, barely 20 years old. Now he was over 200, kept alive by the advanced medical technology humanity had discovered in the megastructures. "We will not attack civilian targets," Hyun-woo said quietly. "We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice." Sora met his eyes. "The fleet wants blood, Admiral. After what the Dominion did to us, they want to see our enemies suffer." "I know," Hyun-woo said. "But we are better than that. We have to be." He looked out at the assembled warships, at the greatest military force humanity had ever created, and made a decision that would define everything that came next. "Send the order," he said. "We advance." The fleet began to move, 500 warships sliding through space like silent predators. They were heading toward Dominion space, toward the worlds that had celebrated humanity's extinction for 2 centuries. The ghosts were coming home. The first battle happened at a small military outpost called Station Arcturus. It was a strategic location, positioned at the border between Dominion space and the Outer Territories, and it housed a garrison of 3,000 soldiers from 6 different species. The station commander was a veteran officer who had fought in a dozen conflicts, but he had never seen anything like what appeared on his sensors that morning. 20 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, surrounding the station before anyone could even sound the alarm. The ships were massive, dwarfing the station itself, and their weapons were already charged and ready. The station commander opened a communication channel, his voice steady despite his fear. "Unknown vessels, this is Dominion Station Arcturus. You are in violation of territorial boundaries. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." The response came immediately. A human voice, female, speaking with absolute authority. "Station Arcturus. This is Captain Sora of the human fleet. You have 2 options. Surrender immediately, and your personnel will not be harmed. Resist, and we will destroy this station in less than 60 seconds. The station commander looked at his tactical officer. "How long until reinforcements arrive?" Code: 4 hours, sir. 4 hours. They would all be dead in 4 hours if they fought. The commander had served the Dominion for 30 years, but he was not ready to die for a war that had supposedly ended 2 centuries ago. "Power down weapons," he ordered. "Broadcast our surrender." Within minutes, human soldiers were boarding the station. They moved with mechanical efficiency, securing every corridor, every room, every potential threat. The station's garrison was disarmed and confined to the mess hall, where they sat in stunned silence, watching their captors with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Lieutenant Jun-ho was leading the boarding operation. He was young for his rank, only 35. But he had been training for this moment his entire life. Every human born in the void megastructures knew why they existed. They were the children of survivors. They were the ones who would reclaim what had been stolen. He walked through the station's command center, looking at the data stored in its systems. Military deployments, fleet movements, strategic installations. Everything the Dominion had built in this sector over the last 2 centuries was laid bare before him. "Download everything," Jun-ho ordered. "We need to know what we are facing." The attack on Station Arcturus was just the beginning. Over the next 48 hours, human forces struck simultaneously at 23 different locations across the Outer Territories. Military bases, weapons factories, fleet assembly yards. Every target was chosen with surgical precision, and every attack followed the same pattern. Overwhelming force, demands for immediate surrender, and strict orders to avoid civilian casualties. The Dominion had never seen anything like it. Their military doctrine was based on massive fleet actions and sustained campaigns. The humans were fighting a different kind of war, one based on speed, precision, and technology that seemed almost magical compared to what the Dominion possessed. At the Nexus Gate, the largest Dominion fleet in a century was gathering. Over 300 warships from 8 different species, all preparing to face the human threat. Admiral Hyun-woo's intelligence reports had been correct. The Dominion was making its stand here, at the strategic choke point that controlled access to the core worlds. Commander Ji-woo was there, commanding her patrol fleet as part of the larger armada. She stood on the bridge of the Radiant Judgment, watching the fleet assemble around her, and feeling a growing sense of doubt. She had spent her entire life believing in the Dominion, believing in the righteousness of the war against humanity. But over the last few days, she had been reading the classified files that Da-un had uncovered, files that told a very different story than the one she had been taught. Humanity had not been the aggressors. They had been explorers, colonizers, traders. Yes, they had been expanding rapidly. But they had followed every galactic law, every treaty, every diplomatic protocol. The Dominion had seen their growth as a threat and had decided to eliminate them before they became too powerful. The cleansing had not been self-defense. It had been genocide. Ji Woo's hands were shaking as she read the final report, the one that detailed Earth's destruction. The orbital bombardment had lasted for 6 hours. The entire human population of their home world, over 11 billion people, had died screaming as their planet was turned to glass. Children, families, artists, scientists, dreamers. All of them dead, because the Dominion had been afraid. "Commander, we are receiving new orders," her communications officer said. Ji Woo pulled herself back to the present. "What are the orders?" "The human fleet has been detected. They are approaching the Nexus Gate. All ships are to prepare for combat." Ji Woo looked at her tactical display. The human fleet was smaller than the Dominion Armada, only about 200 ships, but they were moving with absolute confidence. No hesitation, no fear. They were coming to fight, and they believed they would win. "All hands to battle stations," Ji Woo ordered. But even as she gave the command, she was wondering if she was on the wrong side. The Battle of Nexus Gate began at dawn, Sanctus Prime Time. It would be remembered as one of the greatest military disasters in Dominion history. Admiral Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Eternal Defiance, watching the Dominion fleet spread out before him. 300 ships against his 200. On paper, the Dominion had the advantage, but Hyun-woo had something they did not: technology from the ancient megastructures, and 200 years of preparation. "All ships," he broadcast. "Remember why we fight. Remember what they took from us. But remember also that we are not here to become monsters. We fight for justice, not revenge. Engage only military targets. Spare those who surrender. Show them what humanity truly is." The human fleet surged forward, and the Dominion opened fire. The space between the two armadas lit up with weapons, fire, missiles, and energy beams. It looked like chaos, but Hyun-woo could see the pattern. The Dominion ships were fighting the way they always had, relying on overwhelming firepower and superior numbers. The humans were fighting a different war. Human warships phased in and out of normal space, using technology that the Dominion did not even understand. They appeared behind enemy lines, fired devastating volleys, and disappeared before return fire could reach them. Their weapons cut through Dominion shields, like they were made of paper. Their point defense systems shot down every missile, every torpedo, every attack that came their way. Within 20 minutes, the Dominion fleet was in full retreat. 50 ships destroyed, 100 more damaged, and the human fleet had lost only 3 vessels. Ji Woo watched in horror as the ships around her were torn apart. She saw the flagship of the Dominion Armada, a massive dreadnought that had served for 80 years, split in half by a beam of energy that seemed to come from nowhere. She saw crew pods ejecting from dying ships, hoping that someone would pick them up before their life support ran out. And then she saw something that made her decision for her. A Dominion destroyer, its engines damaged, was drifting helplessly in space. A human warship approached it, weapons charged. Ji Woo was certain she was about to witness an execution, but instead, the human ship extended a tractor beam and pulled the destroyer to safety, away from the combat zone. They were showing mercy. Even in the middle of a battle, even after everything that had been done to them, the humans were showing mercy. Ji Woo opened a secure channel to her crew. "Listen to me carefully. What I am about to do is treason. Anyone who does not want to be part of it can leave the bridge now." No one moved. "Good," Ji Woo said. "Shut down all weapons, broadcast a surrender signal, and get me a direct channel to the human fleet commander." Across the Dominion, the war was spreading. Human forces were liberating hidden facilities, finding things that the general population was never meant to know about. Jun-ho's strike team discovered a prison station in a remote system, a place where humans had been kept in cryogenic suspension for decades. Prisoners taken during the war, kept frozen for study, for experimentation, for torture. Tae-yang was part of the liberation force that freed them. He walked through the rows of cryopods, looking at the faces of his people frozen in time, and felt rage burning in his chest. These were soldiers who had fought to defend Earth, civilians who had been captured during the evacuation, children who had been stolen from their parents. "Wake them up," Tae-young said. "Wake them all up. It is time to go home." Tae-young. As the pods began to open, as the prisoners started to wake from their centuries-long sleep, Tae-young made a decision. He had been hiding for too long. It was time to stop being a victim and start being a voice. He activated a secure broadcast, one that would reach every communication network in the galaxy, and he began to speak. "My name is Tae-young. I am human. For 23 years, I have been hiding among you, pretending to be something I am not, because if you knew what I was, you would kill me. But I am done hiding." He pulled up images from the prison station, showing the cryopods, the torture chambers, the experimentation labs. "This is what the Dominion did to my people. This is what they have been hiding for 200 years. And this is why we have returned." The broadcast went viral within hours. Across the galaxy, people who had celebrated the cleansing were suddenly confronted with the reality of what had been done. Some refused to believe it, but others, like Elder Counselor Than, began to question everything they had been told. The war was far from over. But the truth was finally coming to light. High Chancellor Vrex watched Tae-young's broadcast 3 times, and with each viewing, his anger grew stronger. The human had exposed everything. The prison stations, the experiments, the lies that the Dominion had been built upon for 2 centuries. Already, 6 species were threatening to withdraw from the Alliance. Already, protests were erupting on the core worlds. The Dominion was fracturing. And Vrex knew there was only one way to hold it together: fear. He summoned his war council to the command chamber deep beneath Sanctus Prime. These were not politicians or diplomats. These were the military leaders who understood that sometimes peace required terrible sacrifices. "The humans have taken 14 systems," Vrex said, his voice cold and measured. "They have destroyed or captured over half our outer fleet. They have turned our own people against us with their propaganda. This ends now." General Kess, commander of the Dominion's Strategic Weapons Division, stepped forward. "What are you proposing, Chancellor?" Vrex pulled up a holographic display showing 3 colony worlds. All of them had been recently liberated by human forces. All of them now had populations of mixed species, humans and aliens living together, celebrating their freedom from Dominion rule. "These worlds have betrayed us," Vrex said. "They chose the humans over the alliance that protected them. They will serve as an example of what happens to traitors." The room fell silent. Every officer present understood what Vrex was suggesting. "Planet killers," General Kess said quietly. "You want to deploy planet killers?" "Yes," Vrex said. 3 worlds. 3 examples. The humans claim they fight for justice and mercy. Let us see how they respond when we show them that war has a price." Da-un was in the council chamber when she intercepted the classified order. She had been monitoring Dominion military communications since her investigation into the human survivors, and she had built back channels into the most secure networks. When she saw what Vrex was planning, she felt her blood turn to ice. 3 planet killers, 3 worlds, billions of lives. She had 2 choices. She could report this through official channels, hope that someone in the council would stop it, and watch as the message was buried in bureaucracy until it was too late. Or she could commit treason and send the information directly to the humans. Da-un did not hesitate. She encrypted the data, attached every piece of evidence she had, and transmitted it on a frequency she knew the human fleet was monitoring. Then she erased every trace of what she had done and walked calmly out of the intelligence center. If she was caught, she would be executed. But at least, she would not have 3 billion deaths on her conscience. Admiral Hyun-woo received the warning 6 hours before the planet killers were scheduled to launch. He read the intelligence report twice, his old hands trembling with rage. 3 worlds. One of them was New Haven, a colony world that housed 50 million people, including 20 million humans who had just been liberated from Dominion control. Captain Sora stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. "Not all three," Hyunwoo said. "We can intercept maybe 2 of the weapons, if we move our entire fleet, but that leaves one world undefended. Then we evacuate. There is not enough time. Even if we pulled every transport ship we have, we could not evacuate 20 million people in 6 hours." Sora met his eyes. "Then, we make a choice. Which world do we save?" Hyunwoo looked at the tactical display, at the 3 doomed worlds, and felt the weight of command crushing down on him. He was being forced to play the same game that Vrex had played 200 years ago, deciding who lived and who died based on cold mathematics. He refused. "We split the fleet," Hyunwoo said. "Send 2/3 to intercept the planet killers heading for New Haven and Sanctuary. I will take the remaining ships to the 3rd target. Admiral, we will not have enough firepower to stop the weapon. Then we will put our ships between the weapon and the planet. We will be the shield." Sora understood immediately. Hyunwoo was preparing to sacrifice 1/3 of their fleet to save civilians. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was exactly what humanity had always been. "I am coming with you," Sora said. "No. You will lead the main fleet. If I fail, if we lose this war, someone needs to survive, to tell our story. That will be you." Before Sora could argue, Hyunwoo turned to his communications officer. "Send the order." The human fleet split, racing toward 3 different systems, hoping they would arrive in time. On New Haven, Taeyang was working with the newly freed prisoners when the evacuation order came through. Every human on the planet was to report to the spaceports immediately. Transports were incoming, but there was not enough room for everyone. Taeyang helped organize the evacuation, prioritizing children and the elderly, trying to maintain order as panic spread through the population. People were crying, screaming, demanding to know why this was happening. He had no good answers to give them. Lieutenant Junho and his strike team were there too, providing security, keeping the crowds from turning into a stampede. Junho saw Taeyang across the spaceport and pushed through the crowd to reach him. "We are not going to make it," Junho said quietly. "Even with the transports, we can save maybe 5 million. The rest will die." Taeyang finished. He looked at the crowds, at the families huddled together, at the children who did not understand why their parents were so afraid. "We survived 200 years. We came back from extinction. And now we are going to watch millions of our people die, because one alien decided that mercy is weakness." "Not millions," a voice said behind them. They turned to see Commander Jiwoo approaching, still wearing her Dominion uniform, though she had torn off her rank insignia. "Admiral Hyunwoo is coming. He is bringing a fleet to protect this world." "How many ships?" Junho asked. 67. Against a planet killer. Taeyang felt hope and despair warring in his chest. 67 ships would not be enough. But they were coming anyway, throwing themselves into the fire because that was what humans did. They fought. They resisted. They refused to surrender, even when the odds were impossible. "Then we evacuate as many as we can," Taeyang said. "And we trust that the Admiral knows what he is doing." In orbit above New Haven, Admiral Hyunwoo watched the planet killer approach. It was a massive weapon, a missile the size of a small moon, carrying enough destructive power to crack a planet's core and turn the entire world into an expanding cloud of debris. His fleet of 67 ships spread out in a defensive formation, placing themselves directly in the weapon's path. Every captain knew this was a suicide mission. Every crew member had volunteered to be here. "All ships," Hyunwoo broadcast. "Today we prove what humanity is. We are not the monsters they called us. We are not the threat they feared. We are the defenders. We are the shield, and we will not let our people die while we still draw breath." The planet killer fired its engines, accelerating toward New Haven. Hyun-woo's fleet opened fire, throwing everything they had at the weapon. Energy beams, missiles, railgun rounds traveling at fractions of light speed. The planet killer's shields absorbed the damage, barely slowing down. "Focus all fire on the shield generators," Hyun-woo ordered. "We do not need to destroy it. We just need to crack its defenses." The fleet concentrated their fire on a single point, hammering at the planet killer's shields with relentless precision. Slowly, impossibly, the shields began to weaken, but they were running out of time. "All ships," Hyun-woo said quietly. "Ramming speed. It has been an honor to serve with you." The Eternal Defiance, along with 20 other warships, turned toward the planet killer and engaged their engines at maximum power. They were going to hit the weapon with every gram of mass and every joule of energy they possessed. But before they could make contact, something impossible happened. A new fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly between the planet killer and New Haven. These were not human ships. These were Dominion vessels, over 100 of them, led by Elder Counselor Than. "Admiral Hyun-woo," Than's voice came over the communication channel. "We are here to help. The Dominion Council does not speak for all of us. What Vrex is doing is not justice. It is murder, and we will not stand by and let it happen." Together, the combined human and Dominion fleet hit the planet killer with everything they had. The weapon's shields collapsed under the sustained assault, and its core began to destabilize. "All ships, pull back," Hyun-woo ordered. The fleet scattered as the planet killer exploded, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness of space. The shockwave hit the fleeing ships, damaging several, destroying 2, but the rest survived. New Haven was safe, but the war was far from over. On the other 2 targeted worlds, the human fleet had arrived too late. The planet killers had struck, and 2 colonies had been reduced to rubble. 4 billion people were dead, humans and aliens alike, all of them murdered by Vrex's order. When the news reached Admiral Hyun-woo, he sat in his command chair and wept. Not just for the dead, but for what this meant. The war had entered a new phase. The Dominion had shown that it was willing to commit genocide again, and now the human fleet was demanding revenge. His admirals were calling for total war, for the complete destruction of the Dominion leadership species, for an eye, until the entire galaxy was drowned in blood. Hyun-woo knew he had to make a choice. He could give them the war they wanted, or he could find another way. But every hour he hesitated. More people would die. The ashes were falling, and in the darkness, embers of rage were beginning to burn. The human fleet gathered at the edge of Dominion space, and for 3 days, Admiral Hyun-woo listened to his officers demand revenge. They had lost 2 worlds. 4 billion dead. The recordings from the final moments were horrific. People screaming as their cities were vaporized. Parents holding their children as the fire rained down from the sky. An entire generation erased in minutes. Captain Sora stood before the assembled fleet commanders, her voice filled with cold fury. "We have the power to end this. We can glass their core worlds just as they glassed Earth. We can make them feel what we felt. We can make them pay." The other commanders agreed. They wanted blood. They wanted the Dominion species to know the same terror, the same helplessness that humanity had experienced 200 years ago. But Admiral Hyun-woo sat in silence, listening and remembering. He remembered Earth. He remembered standing on the observation deck of the colony ship as his home world died, watching the orbital bombardment turn continents to ash. He remembered the hate that had burned in his chest, the desire for revenge that had sustained him through 2 centuries of exile. And he remembered the promise he had made to himself, that if humanity ever returned, they would be better. They would not become the monsters that their enemies had feared. "No," Hyun-woo said quietly. The room fell silent. "No," Sora repeated. "Admiral, they killed 4 billion of our people. They deployed planet killers against civilian populations. They chose genocide again. And you say, no? If we respond with genocide of our own, then we prove that Vrex was right to fear us, Hyunwoo said. We prove that humanity is exactly what the Dominion claimed we were. And we doom ourselves to an endless cycle of revenge that will only end when both sides are extinct. He stood, his old body protesting the movement, but his voice was strong. I did not survive 200 years to become the same kind of monster that destroyed my home. We will end this war, but we will end it our way. With justice, not revenge. The commanders protested, but Hyunwoo silenced them with a raised hand. This is not a debate. I am giving you an order. We are going to Sanctus Prime. We are going to end this war, but we will do it without becoming what they feared. In a hidden bunker beneath Sanctus Prime, High Chancellor Vrex was preparing his final weapon. The intelligence reports were clear. The human fleet was coming. The Dominion defenses would not hold. He had perhaps 3 days before human warships entered orbit above his capital world. But Vrex had one last card to play. Deep in the ruins of humanity's former territories, Dominion scientists had discovered an ancient weapon, a device built by humans during the final days of their war, a desperate last resort that had never been deployed. It was called the Star Killer, and it did exactly what its name suggested. It could ignite stars, turning them into supernovas that would destroy everything within light years. Vrex had spent the last 5 years having the weapon reverse-engineered and rebuilt. Now it sat in his command bunker, ready to activate. If he could not save the Dominion, he would take the entire galaxy with him. Sir, his aide said nervously. The weapon is ready. But if we activate it, we will destroy Sanctus Prime as well. We will all die. Better to die than to live under human rule, Vrex said coldly. Prepare to activate the Star Killer. If the humans enter this system, we will turn our own sun into a weapon. Tae Yang and Lieutenant Junho were part of the strike team that infiltrated Sanctus Prime. They had come through the underground tunnels that connected the city's infrastructure, moving in small groups to avoid detection. Their mission was simple: locate Vrex and prevent him from activating whatever final weapon intelligence suggested he was building. They had help from an unexpected source. Da-un, the Dominion intelligence analyst who had warned them about the planet killers, had made contact with the human fleet and offered to guide them through the city. She knew the layout of every government building, every security system, every hidden passage. The command bunker is 3 levels below the council chamber, Da-un said, pointing at a holographic map. It is protected by energy shields and automated defenses. You will need to disable the power grid to get inside. Can you do that? Junho asked. Da-un nodded. I still have access codes. But once I shut down the grid, every security force in the city will know something is wrong. You will have maybe 10 minutes before they locate you. Then we better move fast, Taeyang said. Above Sanctus Prime, the largest space battle in galactic history was beginning. Admiral Hyunwoo's fleet faced the combined might of the Dominion's remaining forces, over 800 ships on each side, filling the space around the planet with weapons, fire, and explosions. But this time, the Dominion was not alone. Elder Counselor Than had brought ships from 6 species that had withdrawn from the Alliance. They were fighting alongside the humans now, trying to end Vrex's madness before it destroyed everything. Commander Jiwoo was there too, commanding a mixed fleet of human and Dominion defectors. She had spent the last weeks broadcasting the truth about the war, about the lies the Dominion had told, about the crimes they had committed. Now she was fighting to create a better future. All ships, Jiwoo broadcast. Focus fire on the orbital defense platforms. We need to create an opening for the ground teams. The combined fleet hammered at Sanctus Prime's defenses, slowly breaking through the layers of shields and weapons that protected the capital world. The Dominion fought back with desperate fury, knowing this was their last stand. In the command bunker, Vrex watched the battle through his monitors and knew he was losing. His fleet was being destroyed. His defenses were failing. In less than an hour, human soldiers would be breaking down his door. Activate the Star Killer, he ordered. His aide hesitated. Sir, if we do this, we kill billions of our own people. They betrayed us, Vrex said. They chose the humans over the Dominion. They deserve their fate. Activate the weapon now. The aide's hands were shaking as he entered the activation codes. The Star Killer began to power up, drawing energy from the planet's core, preparing to send a focused beam of exotic particles into the sun that would trigger a cascade reaction. 3 minutes until activation. Taeyang and Junho reached the bunker entrance just as Daun shut down the power grid. The shields flickered and died, and the blast doors began to unlock. They had 7 minutes before backup power restored the defenses. Move, Junho shouted. The strike team rushed through the doors, engaging the automated defense systems that were still running on emergency power. Energy bolts filled the corridors. 2 of Junho's soldiers went down, wounded but alive. They kept pushing forward. 2 minutes until activation. Vrex stood before the Star Killer, watching the power levels climb. Soon, the sun would explode, and everything within 10 light-years would be vaporized. The humans, the defectors, the traitors, all of them would burn together. Then the bunker doors exploded inward, and Taeyang stepped through the smoke. Stop this, Taeyang said, his weapon aimed at Vrex. It is over. You have lost. Vrex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Lost? I am about to win. In 90 seconds, this entire system will be consumed by fire. You cannot stop it. Then die with us, Taeyang said. 1 minute until activation. Junho was already working on the Star Killer's control panel, his fingers flying across the interface as he tried to shut down the weapon. It is locked! I cannot stop the countdown. Taeyang kept his weapon trained on Vrex. Give us the abort codes. Vreeson. Never, Vrex said. I would rather watch the galaxy burn than see humans rule it. 30 seconds. Taeyang made a decision. He lowered his weapon and stepped toward Vrex. You think we are monsters. You think we are the threat you always feared. But you are wrong. We are not here to rule the galaxy. We are here to save it, even from itself. He looked at the Star Killer, at the countdown ticking towards 0, and thought about everything humanity had survived. 200 years in the void, 2 centuries of exile, billions dead, and they had still chosen to be better. 20 seconds. I forgive you, Taeyang said to Vrex. The Chancellor stared at him in disbelief. What? I forgive you for what you did to my people. For Earth. For the 4 billion who died. I forgive you. Because that is the only way this cycle ends. 10 seconds. Vrex's expression cracked. For the first time in 200 years, he felt something other than fear and hatred. He felt shame. His hands moved to the control panel, entering the abort codes that only he knew. 5 seconds. The Star Killer powered down. The countdown stopped at 3 seconds. The bunker fell silent, except for the sound of Taeyang's breathing. Vrex collapsed to his knees, and for the first time since the war began, he wept. Above Sanctus Prime, the battle was ending. The Dominion fleet had surrendered. The orbital defenses had been disabled. Admiral Hyun-woo received word that the ground team had secured the command bunker and captured Vrex alive. All ships, cease fire, Hyun-woo ordered. The war is over. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began the slow process of healing. Vrex was tried for his crimes, not by a human court, but by a tribunal made up of representatives from every species in the former Dominion Alliance. He was found guilty of genocide, of crimes against sentient species, of murder on a scale that the galaxy had rarely seen. But instead of execution, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, where he would spend his remaining years working to help rebuild the worlds he had destroyed. Taeyang stood before the Galactic Council, now the first human ambassador to the new government. We did not return to conquer, he said. We returned to demand justice. And now we are here to help build something better. A galaxy where no species lives in fear, where no government can commit genocide and call it peace, where the mistakes of the past are never repeated. The Council voted unanimously to accept humanity as equal partners in the new Galactic Accord. Admiral Hyun Woo retired from military service and returned to Earth with a fleet of terraforming ships. The planet that had been dead for 2 centuries was slowly coming back to life. Oceans were being restored, forests were being replanted, cities were being rebuilt. Captain Sora took command of the combined human and allied fleet, dedicating her life to exploring the galaxy and helping species in need. Commander Ji Woo became the director of the new Galactic Justice Commission, ensuring that the crimes of the past were never forgotten and never repeated. And Lieutenant Jun Ho led the teams that searched for other human survivors scattered across the galaxy, bringing them home, reuniting families that had been separated for centuries. 50 years later, on a green hillside on Earth, Tae Yang stood beside a memorial garden. He was old now, his hair white, his body showing the weight of years, but he had lived to see humanity return from extinction. He had lived to see justice done. He had lived to see peace. A young woman approached him. Her name was Bo-Ra, and she was the daughter of 2 void-born humans who had never seen Earth until the terraforming was complete. She wore the uniform of a galactic explorer, and her ship was waiting in orbit to begin a new mission. "Ambassador," Bo-Ra said respectfully, "I wanted to thank you before I left. Your generation saved us. You brought us home." Tae Yang smiled. "We only survived. Your generation will thrive. You will explore. You will build. You will show the galaxy what humanity can be when we are not fighting for survival." Bo-Ra looked up at the sky, where human and alien ships traveled together in peace. "We will not forget what was done to us, but we will not be defined by it either." "That," Tae Yang said, "is exactly what I hoped you would say." As the sun set over Earth's restored oceans, Tae Yang thought about the journey that had brought them here. From extinction to survival, from the void to home, from revenge to justice, from war to peace. Humanity had been declared extinct 200 years ago, but they had returned from the void, not as conquerors, but as something far more powerful. They had returned as proof that even in the darkest night, even in the deepest void, even at the edge of extinction, hope could survive, and that was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.